Oh, hello. Welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Kilty Moroch terrain, which I finally got around to assembling and painting. So, elsewhere on the channel, there's a video which is an assembly guide for that. If you've not seen that, if you're looking at the unassembled sprues and you want me to take through the assembly and show you any pitfalls and things, then go check that video out. This is going to be a shorter video, and I'm just looking at how I painted it. I'm a great believer in painting terrain quickly, so let's see what I did to get it on the table. So here we go, here are my basic recipes. Don't worry, I'm going to talk through exactly what I did. If you've seen my video on painting the Octarius terrain, it's basically the same idea. I got the same mechanism for painting terrain, which is not my invention. It was something that was taught to me by a very kind Games Workshop employee years ago at Warhammer World. I can't remember the gentleman's name. A way in which they quickly paint up terrain, not for studio shots, but for events and things there. Obviously, I'm not quite as talented at it as they are, but it is the best way I've found to paint terrain. So the first thing to note is that whatever you're painting, you might look at this terrain and it's basically red, and you might think to yourself, well, I'm going to spray it red. Right? That's like the obvious choice. And that's what I would have done before I had found out about this method. I would have sprayed the terrain red and then probably started trying to wash it. And then you end up with using a whole pot of wash, right? And they're about £5 on a pot of wash. And you get sticky fingerprints in it because it's quite hard to hold the terrain and wash it. And the wash takes a while to dry. And you get yourself into a big mess. So what we do is we actually undercoat the whole thing with Chaos Black spray, right? And then we're going to do a really heavy dry brush of, in my case, I chose Corn Red. And when I talk about a heavy dry brush, that is what Games Workshop sells this brush for. The big, medium scenery brush. I'm sure if you wanted to, you could get a brush from B&Q, which is it's like a DIY store in the UK, or whatever you've got in the States. But you want a stiff, bristled, massive brush, right? And you're going to get quite a lot of paint on the brush, right? Rub the paint off on, I always use a big piece of cardboard. If I'm doing terrain, I don't use my normal, I've got a fancy little dry brushing palette. It's from Artist Opus. It's not that fancy, but it's a little bit of a sort of laser engraved MDF. But if I'm doing this, I get a big sheet of cardboard, just up and down on the brush on the cardboard till it seems reasonably dry. And then what I always do, and I make a big mess of myself, is I drag the brush gently over my arm, okay? And you can see then just how wet it is or not, because you can feel the moisture on the brush. And when you've got a fair bit of dry pigment on there, just go nuts. Go absolutely nuts on the terrain, and you're getting the majority of the colour on it with that dry brush. But what you're doing by doing it that way round, first of all, it's much quicker to dry brush than it is to try and base coat on a colour, okay? And secondly, you're getting, if you look, here's a really good example on the roof of the building where my laser pointer is, you're getting all the shades and shadowing done for you. Now, look, the effect isn't as perfect and wonderful as it would be if you painted it all and washed it all and edge highlight it all, but you'd also be there for about 1,000,000 years. Now, I'm a firm believer that the standard of painting for terrain needs to be good, but your miniatures should stand out on the terrain as being a cut above, right? So we dry brush on that Corn Red all over to get all the colour onto all these pieces. The only thing I didn't dry brush Corn Red onto was, you can't quite see it here properly, but the top of the radar dish. So I left these into two separate parts. So the base got the dry brush of Corn Red, the top got a dry brush of Lead Belcher, and the same with the stairs. The stairs got a dry brush of Lead Belcher as well, okay, over black. The reason I decided to go for this red colour scheme is because this stuff really reminds me of the Space Marine base buildings from the video game Dawn of War 1. And in that game, if you play a Space Marine army, your buildings are the same bright, vivid, all-over colour as your Marines. So I kind of chose the same colours as my Red Hunters Phobos Marines for this building, with the idea being that if I'm playing with them on this board, or, you know, it is a little Red Hunters outpost, covert monitoring base, inquisitorial supply depot. That's my fluff for this little piece of terrain, okay? So then we go about layering. Now it is up to you how much detail that you want to pick out, okay? Because this is the bit that takes all the time, okay? So you don't have to pick every little thing out. You don't need to pick out as much stuff as I've picked out, okay? But this is how you're going to pick stuff out. So the first thing I did was I went and got lead belcher, just straight up lead belcher, a little bit of water, and all, apart from the big radar dish and the stairs, because they were dry brushed silver, everything else has got a solid coat of lead belcher, okay? A solid coat of lead belcher on all those silver areas. Rune Lord brass, there are little plaques, you can see some here on the landing pad, you can see there's a little plaque on the end of that pipe there, there's a little plaques just above where my laser pointer is there, and just above where my laser pointer is there on the roof. So I went around and got all the plaques, okay? Liberator gold only for the eagle on the top of the comms tower, okay? And Iandon Dark Sun. Now you don't need to use Iandon Dark Sun. Iandon Dark Sun is an old contrast paint. No, not contrast paint. An old foundation paint, which were these paints that they made a long time ago to have better coverage than the standard layer paints at that time, right? And so I like to use them up on projects like this. They have a bit of a thicker pigment and they might obscure detail on a finely detailed miniature, but for these fuel tanks and for the edging around the little opening door here, the cargo bay door, that was the old Iandon Dark Sun foundation paint, but you could just as easily use an Avalon Sunset to get that effect if you've only got the modern paints. There's no deal. I'm just trying to use up paint that I've got, that I've paid for once upon a time. And then Black Legion and Bold Titanium White only on. There's a little Mechanicum Opal here, right, with the half black skull, half white skull, and then half white cog, half black cog. And there's another one here that I turned away from the camera because I'm an idiot. Okay, so I picked those out as well because they seemed important. And that was really it with the layering, okay? And then you're going to go over and you're going to give the whole thing, metallics, everything you've done, a much lighter dry brush of Screaming Skull. And that's what you see here, the line here, this white stuff all across here, the sort of white lines across here, the white across here, the white across here, all the little bits of white that are highlighting it where light falls. Screaming Skull is like an omni highlight. I've talked to Zimbad about this because he went to art college and he knows about colours and pigments, but you can basically highlight anything, even a metallic paint, with Screaming Skull and have it look okay, because it's just that off-white, slightly warm off-white. I don't know why it works, but it does. It's kind of voodoo. Now, I know you might think by looking at that, oh, it looks a bit streaky, it looks a bit weird, it looks a bit unpolished. Would you get a sharper result if you went round with a number 2 brush and edge highlighted all these little divots here and all these lines? Yeah, absolutely you would. Absolutely you would. But for what it is for terrain, this was about a day's work painting all this. I think this looks really, really good for the amount of effort that I invested into it. Hopefully you agree. Okay. So that's the Screaming Skull, and that really just gives you your highlight over everything you've done, okay? And then finally we're going to do a little bit of weathering. This really is, and there are loads of different ways you can weather things. You can do stuff with enamel washes, and you can do stuff with weathering powders, and you can do stuff with everything, all these sorts of things. When I'm doing terrain, I always make what's called a filth wash, okay? And what essentially you want to do is you want to go to Games Workshop, or Element Games, if you're so inclined to help the channel out, and you get yourself a pot of Lamahan medium, okay? Other acrylic medium is probably available, but I've never tried it, alright? And then you put about 3 big, hefty brushes of Mornfang Brown into the pot of Lamahan medium. So you end up with, like, granules of brown paint suspended very loosely in a lot of medium. And then what you can do is unfortunately, it's not shown incredibly well in the... I wonder if I can. Let's see if this will work. If I go in here like that, and if I go for a... Oh, yes, look at this. right? Now, you can just about see here on the photograph, if I go back to my laser pointer, where are we? Oh, no, I can't have both at the same time. Well, travesty. But if you look on the steps, you can see the brown, okay, in the corner of the steps. You can see the brown along the base of the steps there. You can see that is this filth wash. You can also see it along here on the guttering here. There's a little bit of brown on the steps there. That is all just this filth wash, and it will go on, and there's some all the way along the bottom there. There's little touches all the way along the bottom there. It's a really, really subtle effect, but if you see it in person, and there's loads of it just in the corners here as well. And it goes on, it looks really bright and vivid. But after it dries, because there's so little pigment and there's so much medium, all that medium just sods off. And the pigment tends to be left like residue. Just like if you were to leave coffee to dry out, the pigment naturally clings into the corner. Right, the heavier pigment naturally kind of clings back into the corner, and it gives you a really realistic and really easy weathering effect. Now, would I necessarily want to weather, if I was painting a plague marine, would I want to weather it like this? Not really, because again, you're leaving like these, this is quite thick as things go, and quite chalky as things go, pigment that you end up with. But for these kinds of things, where, let's be fair, there's not a lot of detail on there that you're worried about clogging up. Right? Yes, you're going to add a little bit of texture. That's fine. It's a really nice technique for terrain. I love the filth wash technique. Okay? Don't think 3 brushes is what to be honest with you, I've got a little pot of it mixed up from the time I did my Octarius terrain. I used it and I've got a little bit left, so I'm not 100% on the actual total recipe and the ratios. You will kind of know you've got it right when you see it, though. You need to put enough brown paint in that the whole mixture looks brown, obviously, and if you leave it be, you'll see sediment settle towards the bottom, so give it a spin on the vortex mixer before you put it round the base of your terrain pieces. And then that would normally be done, right? That's the method. Chaos Black Spray, dry brush your main colour, layer on any colours that you want to pick out, dry brush your Screaming Skull, and then put your filth around the bottom. These models have an abundance of lights on them, and so I did a really, really quick and dirty lighting effect on them as well, which is literally just, you put some white paint on, and paint the little lenses. So there's lights here, there's lights on top of this building here, there's lights on top of the tower here. You're just putting on some white paint. Again, the AK Interactive Bolt Titanium White's what I use. And then you get your cyan and yellow contrast paint and just stick it on. And it looks passably, right, like now before I got to this stage, like these little dome lights that you're seeing on the landing pad now, these were painted all over with lead belcher, and they were highlighted with in the dry brush step and everything else. And then after I've done everything else, just over the lead belcher in the gaps, carefully painted in the white, and then just smash the yellow contrast paint over the whole dome. Yeah, you're going to get some yellow over the silver, but that's okay. It looks like you're being really fancy and doing some kind of object source light and stuff. And really what you're just doing is painting terrain really, really quickly. Yeah, you can see when it's zoomed in, there's bits that look a little bit messy. There's bits that are a little bit outside the lines, like on the landing pad here. And yes, you can go back and tidy that stuff up, but the idea with terrain is to get it painted. How many people have you seen with beautifully painted armies and the terrain's just been sprayed a colour? So I put it to you, this looks better than just spraying your terrain a colour and getting on with your life, okay? So that is how I painted my Phobos terrain. Final thoughts. Getting good terrain layouts with this stuff is challenging. Now, I want to talk about this. I'd forgotten. I'm going to go back to the previous slide because I can tell you what I'm talking about. When I was laying out this terrain to take my photograph, I wanted to make use of as much of the set as I could and show you what it could do. So like I showed you in my building the thing set, you've got these 4 wall pieces, one of which has a gate in. Oh, I've reminded myself of an extra thing that I did. On the gate here, and on the floor here, and on the floors over here, just before I did the dry brush step, I did also just put down some Griff Charger grey contrast, only because I want that gate to stand out just a little bit, in case I want to use it as a door. I know that's heresy to some people, but if I want to let people move freely through the gate, then we need to define and see where the gate is. It's not as vivid as on my Orc terrain, where I painted the doors bright blue for that purpose, but it does at least not quite disappear into the walls in the same way. Anyway, as I was saying, I wanted to lay this stuff out for the photograph. This isn't a game board setup. Don't leave me a comment telling me how it wouldn't be fun to play on. And I wanted to use as many of these little connectors as possible. So I've used 2 of the little connectors that let you connect the wall onto the side of the main hab building here. The other 2 connectors are off on the side here, because you can't use all 4 of them in the set. If you could use more if you added more stuff. But what I thought I'd do initially was come out along here, come along here, and then put another wall in here, and I imagined that the wall would match up here, so you could effectively use the hab bunker as one side of the square using 2 connectors and 3 walls. You can't do that because the walls are longer than the bunker, so you're only ever really going to use, as far as I can see, 2 of the 4 connectors that you've been given, unless you go and buy a second bunker. And then you want to make a big old trench wall thing. It's the same with these corner pieces. I have used all 4 of my corner pieces, but only by having the corner pieces kind of flying open like this. Obviously, I could have arranged the walls into just a square, and then I've used all 4 corners and none of these bits for joining it onto the building. But it is what it is. It's going to be hard to get cool layouts, and I think actually, with a gamey hat on, you're going to want to break the wall up, aren't you? Like, there's going to be a tension between making it look good and making it really playable. I can't see that you're going to want to actually join it up and make it look cool if you're wanting the best gameplay experience. But we'll see. Me and Zimbad are going to get some games in on this and see how we go. If you've got experience of playing games on this terrain and you've got some things that you like to do, I know people like to do different things with it, let me know how you like to put the terrain together and what experience you've had. If you habitually add stuff to it or don't use stuff, that's useful. I was hobby streaming yesterday and I will be hobby streaming again tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure what I'll be working on. Last time I was working on a zombie dragon. That is getting pretty close to being finished. I might still be working on the rider tomorrow night. We'll have to see. So you'll have to tune in for that. It'd be a surprise. And I've written here YouTuber things because I keep forgetting to do it. I know it's tedious to say please subscribe, but the statistics bear out. If you don't tell people to subscribe, they don't subscribe. And if you tediously say please subscribe, then somebody out there will go, okay, I've seen a lot of this guy's videos, I guess I'll click subscribe. We're really trying to get to 1,000 subs now, because that's when I'm able to make a little bit of money off the channel, and where a couple of other things open up. So that would be really cool. Also, I have a colleague work with the channel about his tedious band, and he's got 1,200 or something subscribers. It would be great to beat him because Warhammer's cool. So please do subscribe if you haven't already. Please do click the like button as well. That helps. Or the dislike button. Actually, it's all interaction and it all helps me out. And it lets me know if you don't like this style of video. That gives me some feedback. As I've already said, leave me some comments if you've got any thoughts on how you'd use and lay out this terrain. If I've somehow inspired you to actually pick some of this terrain up, consider going down, clicking on my Element Games link in the description. Just to expand the description, the link is there. And also down in the description you find the links to my social, Instagram and Twitter, where I basically just post pictures of stuff that I've painted. And Discord. Discord is free. It's quite a nice little community now. It's quite active, every day. So please consider joining the Discord as well. Is there anything else? Oh, I won't ask you to click the bell because the bell's really annoying. Yeah, that's about it. So I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, whatever it is that you are doing with it. And I will see you again either for the live stream tomorrow or will be another video on Friday. Cheery, bye.